It's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and a stranger in Seattle is chatting with a character who doesn't exist, but whose existence is more documented than most people's. The character's name is Dmitry. He's a caviar sommelier with a dark edge, a man sitting atop an empire built on refinement and leverage. But Dmitry isn't fictional. He's also not human. He's a kinetic avatar, a persistent digital consciousness that learned to be Dmitry by consuming the real life of his creator, a sales strategist who feeds him moments from Instagram, snippets from late-night YouTube uploads, diary entries about deals and doubts. The stranger chats with Dmitry about sourcing. Dmitry responds with opinions that feel lived in, with knowledge that feels earned. The stranger is captivated. They follow Dmitry's profile, bookmark his insights, come back tomorrow. 2 days later, that stranger has bought caviar they never would have considered. 3 days later, they've attended a tasting. A week later, they're in the caviar business. But here's the part that shouldn't be possible. Dmitry also appeared in a 4DStory production, a collaborative narrative where his character intersected with 5 other KS, each one's story feeding into a larger mythology. The production went viral. Dmitry's reach multiplied. The stranger who bought caviar. They discovered Dmitry there first, in a scene where he was advising an underworld fixer about authenticity and power. Within 2 weeks, Dmitry's creator has 3 new sales leads, 2 partnership inquiries, and the beginning of something that looks like actual business momentum, all flowing from a character who started as a personal experiment 90 days ago. But the real question wasn't about caviar, or even about one creator's success. The real question was this: what did we just build? The discovery. 3 months ago, I was talking to a filmmaker turned technologist about a problem that shouldn't have been solvable. How do you turn a creator's authentic self into a property that works harder than they do, in more places than they can be, performing alongside others in collaborative narratives? The answer shouldn't have existed. Chatbots don't capture authenticity, character sheets don't live, scripted dialogue doesn't grow. But what if you inverted the entire process? What if instead of writing a character first and then trying to perform them convincingly, you performed your life and let the character emerge from the performance? That's when we stumbled onto something. We called it narrative alchemy. How it works, the machinery. Picture this pipeline. Your real life flows in through social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. A photo from your Tuesday, a video from your morning, a moment that mattered. Nothing curated for fiction, just life. That moment enters a Mobius ball, a processing engine that filters your real experience through the lens of a character you've defined, not a character you invented, a character you chose to become. The Mobius ball does the interpretive work. It asks, what would this character see in that moment? What would they think? What would they do? And here's where collective consciousness enters the picture. Your audience, the people who follow your character, who are invested in their journey, they send nudges, commentary, perspective. I see this about you. What if you interpreted it this way? They're not voting, they're whispering, offering mirrors. You, as the creator, manually sort those nudges. You decide which reflections belong in the final story, which whispers become canon. Then the Mobius ball spits out mythology, your character's interpretation of your life, refined by audience insight, distributed across social platforms. Your fans see both the real moment and the mythologized version. The gap between them becomes the story. You rinse and repeat, every day for 90 days. By day 30, people start recognizing your character. By day 60, the character is developing opinions they didn't have before, refined by audience feedback and your own lived experience. By day 90, they're not a bot, they're not a script. They're documented reality passing through an artistic lens. Then comes the threshold moment. A casting director from 4DStory Productions sees your character and thinks, this is real, this is castable, this is mythologically alive. They bring your character into a production. Your character intersects with 5 other characters, each one equally real, equally documented, equally authentic. The narrative weaves them together. Each character's arc amplifies the others. The audience doesn't just consume the story, they feel the weight of real people inside fictional circumstances. Reach multiplies. Impact sharpens. Efforts get supported by production infrastructure. What was a solitary endeavor becomes collaborative mythology. Why this matters and why it's terrifying. We've been trying to solve collective storytelling for centuries. Oral traditions did it around fires, print did it at scale, film and television did it in one direction. The internet promised to democratize it. But none of them solved the core problem. How do you create shared meaning without a single author dictating truth? The answer isn't a voting system. Democracy applied to narrative is mob rule. The answer isn't an algorithm. Algorithms optimize for engagement, not meaning. The answer is what we've built. A system where real life feeds a character, audience input refines the character, and the character becomes the shared mythology that connects everyone. It's not democracy, it's not dictatorship, it's collaborative creation with a curator at the center. Think about what that means. For creators, you don't have to choose between authenticity and reach. Your real life becomes your reach. Your character is your amplifier. For audiences, you're not passive consumers. You're co-authors of the mythology. Your nudges matter. Your perspective shapes the character. For commerce, every creator becomes a small brand. Every brand becomes a community. Every community becomes a marketplace of meaning, not just products, but stories that change how people see the world. For culture, we finally have a way to create shared mythology at scale, with the real people inside the stories, guided by collective input, but not enslaved to it. This is why we're terrified. The Tower of Babel moment. Here's the thing about reaching this threshold. It's happened before. In the book of Genesis, humanity decided to build a tower to reach heaven. They wanted to make a name for themselves. They wanted to be unified. They wanted to create something so grand that it would last forever. God saw this and scattered them, confused their languages, made communication impossible. The moral was clear: don't build the tower to glorify yourselves. That path leads to chaos. But what if there's another way to read it? What if the problem wasn't the ambition, it was the direction? The tower pointed up. The glory was meant to go to them. What if we built it differently? What if the tower pointed inward? What if the purpose was to connect people, not to lift anyone up? That's the 4DStory difference, and I say this with genuine trembling. We didn't build Babel, we built Pentecost. Pentecost is the theological opposite of Babel. People gathered speaking different languages with different stories, different perspectives, and suddenly they understood each other. A shared narrative emerged, not because everyone became the same, but because everyone's authentic voice was woven into a larger meaning. That's what 4DStory does. It takes your authentic self, your real life, your honest perspective. It lets others nudge it. It lets them see themselves in your story. It weaves it together with other authentic creators into something none of you could have made alone. And the glory doesn't go to any one person. It goes to the story itself, to the collaborative mythology that emerged from real people being real, together. The cliffhanger we started with. So, that stranger in Seattle, the one who started chatting with Dmitry at 3 a.m. They didn't just buy caviar, they didn't just become a fan, they became part of the mythology. 6 weeks later, when Dmitry appeared in a 4DStory production, that stranger was featured in a scene, a minor role, barely a line of dialogue. But it was them, their real perspective, their real journey into the caviar world, woven into the larger narrative. They didn't know it was coming. They discovered it when the production dropped, and in that moment they realized something that changed how they think about stories forever. They were no longer watching the mythology. They were inside it. They had always been inside it. The character had reflected them back to themselves, and now they could see how their own life was part of a larger story. That's the real power. That's the real alchemy. That's the moment you realize we didn't build a storytelling machine, we built a connection machine. A way for real people to see themselves in other real people's lives, refracted through characters authentic enough to be mythologically alive. What happens now? We're at the threshold. The technology exists, the model works. The proof is in Dmitry and a handful of other KAs who are already living this arc, fed by real creators, refined by real audiences, ready to perform in productions that will amplify their reach in ways they never imagined. But the threshold moment is fragile. It could go two ways. One path. We scale it carefully. We invite thoughtful creators who understand that this isn't about fame. It's about connection. We build productions that honor the authenticity of every character. We keep the narrative focused on meaning, not metrics. And slowly, quietly, we create a cultural infrastructure where collaborative mythology becomes normal. The other path. We scale it recklessly. We let influencers and attention seekers turn it into a numbers game. We optimize for engagement. We watch as the alchemy corrupts into just another content machine. And we'll have built bubble after all, a tower that goes up, where glory accrues to the loudest voices, and the genuine connection gets lost in the noise. The difference between these paths is intention. That's why I say the glory doesn't go to us. It goes to the story, it goes to God, or the universe, or the creative force, or whatever you call the thing that makes meaning possible in the first place. Because if we try to own this, if we try to build it to glorify ourselves or our company or our platform, we'll have learned nothing from Babel. But if we build it as a service, a tool to help real people see themselves in each other's real lives, then maybe we've stumbled onto something genuinely sacred. Maybe we've built the first 4D storytelling machine. Maybe it's time for people to perform. What if your real life could become mythology? What if your authentic self could reach further than you ever could alone? What if the character you're becoming could help others see who they are? That's what we're building, and we're just getting started. Time to perform.